Welcome to the Gospel according to Kinison, and I am your host, Bill Kinison. I'm so happy to have you here this morning, and I'm excited about what we're getting ready to teach, and I never knew her, but believe me, she influenced my life. Aretha Franklin made the transition from this life to the next life, and my prayers go out to her or to her family. And she influenced, I'd have to say, if you had an interracial church at all, she influenced you. I know she did the churches that I pastored and Sherry pastored, and she's one of the great influences on Sherry and her singing and all that. So it seems like every week we have someone, and but I did want to recognize Aretha Franklin. I loved her music, and her album "Amazing Grace" I thought was one of the best albums I've ever heard. And I remember that there were some people upset because they recorded it. Actually, I think in her father's church with James Cleveland and his choir here in L.A. And so the musicians and all that worked with her all went out and smoked cigars. And I remember Christians were so upset that here she's in church and did all this great album, and they're out there smoking cigars. That's how condemning sometimes we can be. But I want to welcome you to the program. We are coming to you live from sunny Southern California, and it is beautiful. I hope it's beautiful where you're at. We actually reach around the entire world, and so I'm excited. Our audience is growing every week, and it just seems like we get bigger. I'm going to therapy right now with a torn rotator cuff that second time I tore it, and one of the therapists there, she got to talking to me last week and started telling me how she watches our program. And she didn't quite understand me saying that faith was an expectancy. So we discussed that entire thing. She was Seventh-day Adventist, and we reached I think we reached the gamut. We have Taoists that watch us. We have Buddhists that watch us. Matter of fact, when I was in Boston, half of that crowd was Buddhists. We have Christians. We have Jews. We have Catholics. You name it. I think we have about everyone that watches this program from different faiths. And so somebody said, "Well, don't you try to convert them?" And I got to thinking one time, I was raised in a Pentecostal Christian home, as you well know. But what if I'd been raised in a Buddhist home, or what if I was Jewish, or what if I was raised in a Taoist home? I would probably be as convinced that what they teach is as sure as what I teach, and or have taught. And so, that's the reason that I study so much. First, I study so much because I remember when I was young, and my father used to just fellowship with anyone, which is fine. I'm not criticizing that at all. But I remember there were some preachers, and again, I'm not being critical, but there was some of them that was illiterate. And a lot of them had no idea what they were talking about. And even at a young age, as a child, I thought, if I ever get to be a preacher, I want to know what I'm talking about. And yesterday, we have a mother-in-law that stays with us, and she likes a particular preacher. I think she likes it for the music. And I was listening to one of the preachers on this program yesterday, just as I was doing something else, and I could not believe what I started hearing. And that was, he was saying that you should only read the King James Version. Forget about translations, forget about the other versions, everything else, and I about lost it. I thought, how ignorant a statement like that. It reminded me, and I told Sherry, it reminded me when I was just a young preacher. I mean, I was young, and they asked me to be the evening speaker at a big convention, a couple thousand people there. I don't know how many preachers, in a place called Shepherdsville Hill, Kentucky, just outside of Louisville, and they had a big campground. And I remember I was up preaching one of those evenings, and I was telling them, you know, the original writing says this. This is what it means in the original writing. And I remember an older lady got up, packed up her Bible, packed up her purse, and got up, and she was sitting right in the front row. Got up and started, but she stopped before she started up the aisle and turned around and told me, said, I want to tell you something. If the King James Version was good enough for Apostle Paul, it's good enough for me. And that's what this preacher reminded me of yesterday. Why can't we just say what's really down in our heart, instead of always trying to change everyone? Anyhow, I want to get into our lesson, and it's going to be, I think it's going to be fairly interesting. Why do you work? And the reason I developed this lesson is that recently I had someone ask me, say, how much do you get paid to do this? And I go, I don't get paid. You do it for nothing. I said, yeah. You get up on Sunday morning and you teach for absolutely nothing. I said, yeah, we don't ask for any money, and I don't need the money, and yeah, I do. Why do you do that? So I kind of developed a little lesson on it, and we're going to get into it. Before we get there, I want to start with Matthew 6:33. But seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all of these things shall be added unto you. Everyone is striving to get ahead and to make it in life. You see, when you believe you can do it, the how to do it develops. The first thing is you have to get a consciousness and a thinking of you can do it. And I'm here to tell you this morning, you can do whatever you'll want to accomplish in life, you can do it. I'd be careful about telling my family and friends, because they're the first ones that'll discourage you. But if you can believe that you can do it, I promise you, the how to do it is going to develop inside of you. See, on the other hand, if you doubt something enough, the mind will attract all kinds of reasons to support that unbelief. If you doubt something enough, your mind is going to find all kinds of reasons why it's not going to happen. So you have to first recognize who you are. And then you've got to get into a position that you believe you can do it. Now, whatever it takes to do that, that's what you want to do. You see, we're always looking for a miracle. Everybody's praying for a miracle. Give me a miracle in the lottery. Give me a miracle in this. Did you ever stop to think there's no miracles with God? I know that just woke up a bunch of you. When I say that, to all things are possible to him that believes. That doesn't take a miracle. God doesn't look at situations as if they need a miracle. He looks at things and goes, you know what? I gave you all the ability. I gave you all the opportunities to handle this. Everything you need is on the inside of you. I remember when we used to do our crusades, especially on our television and radio broadcasts, we would always start off with, are you ready for a miracle? Ready as I can be. Are you ready for a miracle? And now I've changed my tune, because you can control the destiny of what comes into your life. No miracles are required if you understand who you are and your rightful inheritance. Somebody said, well, you keep talking about who I am. I'm brand new. I don't know what you're talking about. You are a child, the beloved child of God. Jesus wasn't the only one. You're also one. You are the beloved, first begotten of God. His blood flows through your veins. Sharon and I just did a DNA test. Man, I just tell you everything. And I had always been told that I was Irish and Scottish, and I found out that, and I don't know what this is, but I'm Western European, like almost 70% is Western European. The other, I think another 15% is English. But you know what I really am? I'm 100% child of God. I'm 100% His son. My DNA is His. He begot me. Oh yes. Oh yes. You see, it's the way you have been created. You have been created to overcome. That's what you're supposed to be. You are a rich and creative spiritual being. Don't let these earthly things drag you down. Don't let them convince you in the negative. You can never, now listen, you can never be less than the child of God. You can never be less than that. That is what you are, that is what you're always going to be, and you can never be less than that. Within you right now and always is the possibility of a limitless experience of inner stability and outer treasure. All you have to do is believe. You know, I was reading, I got a magazine, I forget what it was. I actually picked it up because Willie Nelson was on the cover, and I love Willie Nelson. And but they had a quote from a big gentleman named Shaquille O'Neal, and he was 46 years old when, which is just now. He's 46 years old, and he said this: "You can accomplish incredible things no matter what stage of life you are in." Think about that. This is a man that where he made his money, and he is retired. He no longer does that, but he's now involved in other things. You can accomplish incredible things no matter what stage of your life you're in. So you can't be too old. You can't be too young. You are always capable of accomplishing incredible things. Jesus said in John 8 and 32, "And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." I want you to think that, because we have read that and we've quoted it our entire life. Probably it's one scripture that we quote maybe more than any others on our program. But it still remains the truth. And ye shall know the truth. Now I want you to remember who he was talking to. He was talking to the religious leaders of that day, the Pharisees. And he not only was talking to them, he had pretty much interrupted their program of what they do. And so he starts telling these people who are the religious leaders of that day, these gentlemen, because the women, they wouldn't have allowed to do that. But he tells them, Not only this, but they try to argue with him. He tells them, ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Well, they came right back with, we're not in bondage to any man. And then if you want to read it, it's in John the 8th chapter. It's actually pretty good, but I don't want to get into all that. What upset them so much is they understood something we don't understand, a lot of us. When Jesus said that, he implied that our bondage in our life is caused by the acceptance of erroneous beliefs. That's what the implication was. Now, I've heard preachers get people all worked up and everything else and tell them, you know, I'm giving you the truth, and you'll know the truth. And the truth shall make you free. Well, most of the time they went home as bound as they came, because they didn't realize that the bondage in their life was caused by the erroneous beliefs that they had accepted, and maybe they'd been taught their whole life, so they didn't know any difference. A Greek philosopher named Zeno says the most important part of learning is to unlearn our errors. Woo! Well, you're not going to get a lot of preachers and Christians to do that. But the most important, according to him, the most important part of learning is to unlearn our errors. My father, which I thought was a great man, great preacher, and he would give me a lot of little ways of giving me advice, and I remember one of them was, when you think you know everything, well, let me tell you what the beginning of knowledge is. The knowledge of ignorance, he used to tell me, is the beginning of knowledge. When you start accepting you don't know anything, you're starting to learn something now. Well, we need to get that way when it comes to church. We need to get that way with the beliefs. Has it worked for you? Just let me ask you a simple question. Has it worked for you? If it hasn't worked for you, you need to unlearn it. And I'd say a vast majority of you listening to me today, it has not worked for you. So for us to start learning, we have to unlearn our errors. Why do you work? That was the question they asked me. Why do you do this? Why do you work? It's obvious that most people work to make a living. But if that's the only reason that you have, then it is one of the errors that you need to unlearn. I'm just getting down to brass tacks with you this morning. I'm getting down to the very bottom. What are you getting out of your work? If I ask you that, you tell me, well, I'm getting a salary, I'm getting fringe benefits, I'm getting executive perks, then I'm going to tell you you're vastly underpaid. Well, you don't know how much I make. It doesn't make any difference. What we're talking about is that by the narrowness of vision, you're shortchanging yourself. Your prosperity, and I want you to listen, this is one of those little phrases that I want you to write down if you can. Your prosperity will always be a reflection of your thinking. Woo! All right, that's good stuff, Bill. That's good stuff. Your prosperity and your success will always be a reflection of your thinking. Not somebody else stopping you, not this happening to you, that happening to you. Somebody said, well, I'm having a rough time. I can't pay the rent. I can't feed my family. I can't do this. I can't do that. Change your thinking and unlearn the errors of your thinking. I know this sounds kind of tough. You see, work is, and it should be considered by every worker, a giving process. Don't be influenced. And the first time I heard this phrase, I got so upset. Don't be influenced by another day, another dollar syndrome. I'll never forget, we had this preacher that came and preached for us in Rockford, Illinois. I don't remember if he lasted one night or he's there a week. I don't really remember. I remember his name, but I won't give that to you. Anyhow, when the service was over, I told him, I said, well, you had a good service. And I remember that was the first time I ever heard, another day, another dollar. And I don't know why, that really upset me. Because I guess he was telling me that this is just a job. So what I did tonight, another day, another dollar. And that really upset me. I just felt like that you should, especially if you're doing this, but anything, do it because you love to do it. If you only work for the money, then there's no real giving. It's just a bartering. You must have a job and work for doing what you would gladly do for nothing if you could afford it. That's what you want to do. Let me repeat it. You have to have a job. You must have a job and work for doing what you would gladly do for nothing. You see, growth is what life is all about. It's all about growth. It's not about just paychecks and fringe benefits, but it's about growth. Growth is what life is all about. That's what we're here for, is to grow. See, there's a tendency to deal with our work life almost as if it were a life sentence from which we may ultimately retire as time off for good behavior. I was pastoring in Peoria, Illinois, and that was back in the mid and late 70s. I know I'm an old man. Anyhow, I was getting a message ready, and it was off of Proverbs 29 and 18 that said, where there is no vision, the people perish. Where there is no vision, the people perish. So I went to the HR department there at Caterpillar. And Caterpillar at that time, I don't know how it is now, it's been many years later, but 60% of the workforce in Peoria, Illinois was directly employed by Caterpillar. That isn't counting all your little stores and all the other businesses that were affected by the people that work at Caterpillar. 60% of the working force was employed by Caterpillar. I remember when I was in high school, and I grew up there in Peoria, in East Peoria, and the dream for most of my friends was to go to high school, and if they could get this job without going to high school, they would drop out, and that was to get a job at Caterpillar. And then put in their 25, 30 years, and Caterpillar was not a bad place to work, by the way. Put in their 25, 30 years, retire, and then move up to a place called Lake Mackinac, just north of Peoria, and get up and buy them a little trailer and fish every morning. That was their dream. Put in their time at Caterpillar, almost like a life sentence, and they get out for good behavior. You retire, you buy a little trailer, and you put it there at Lake Mackinac, and every morning you get up and go fish. So I decided I would go to the HR department and find out how many retirement checks that they average. And I was shocked. I was literally shocked. The lady told me that a little over 18 checks. Other words, these fellas worked their whole life, 25, 30 years, looking forward to that day when they can go out and fish every morning, and they average roughly a year and a half of retirement checks. In other words, they die. on an average of a year and a half. I'm sure there's that live a lot longer and those that live a lot shorter, but that was the average, was a year and a half. It wasn't because they worked at Caterpillar. That was a good place to work. You know what it was? Without a vision, people perish. Without a vision, people die. They no longer had a vision. They had no reason to get up in the morning except to go fish. And that's probably started out good and then that got old. Now you got no reason to get up. Where there is no vision, the people will perish. You see, life is a growth process. And we go through, or we grow through giving. That's how we grow, is through giving. So no matter what the circumstances, if one ever does less than his very best in what he may be doing, no matter what the recognition or the reward, but is storing up what the Easterners call bad karma. That's consciousness. Then you know how it's going to work. Matthew 13:12 says, whosoever hath, to him shall be given. Whosoever hath not, from him shall be taken away even that he hath. It's a fundamental law. It is a fundamental law. There's no way that prosperity can be demonstrated outside of the law of thinking and consciousness. I want to read this comment from one of my favorite writers, Kahlil Gibran, and he literally lays it just on the line. He wrote, if you cannot work with love, but only with distaste, then you should quit your job and go sit at the temple and beg alms from those who work with joy. I was listening to a politician the other day, and I don't know if he's trying to get us to feel sorry for him, but he said, you know, when I was a child, I delivered papers. And he went on, and then I started to think, and I started to feel a little sorry, and then I go, wait a minute. I had a morning paper route when I was 12 years old. I went out and delivered papers in East Peoria, Illinois, when it'd be 100 below wind chill sometimes. One of my first jobs, I was a busboy at Holiday Inn. When I got out of high school, I worked one summer at a construction company that made sewer pipes. I mean, I started thinking, wait a minute. When I was in college, I loaded and unloaded at a warehouse, storm doors and everything else. But you know what? I got to where, and I think every job I had, I loved. Then when I got in the ministry, when I first started, I would, and I still would. I preach for nothing. And maybe Sherry and I should have set our sights a little higher, because sometimes we did preach for nothing. And I told you last week that there was a time when I was young that I preached to make a living. Now Sherry and I, we live to preach. That's why I work. Why do you work? Would you do that job if you wouldn't get paid for it? Then you need to find something that you love to do, and prosperity and success will follow you. We got a few prayer requests. Roxanne, that we've been praying for, is getting better. They moved her to a rehab, but it's going to be a long rehab, so she needs our prayers. Also, Eddie Candela has some issues with his heart, and we want to pray for him this morning. Then, my daughter Ginger is 8 days late on getting little Finnegan into this world, so we're really praying for Ginger, and I'm sure next week when we come on, I'll probably be dancing here in the office and everything else. over little Finnegan making his arrival. Finnegan Samuel is going to make his arrival, I'm sure by next, I hope, one way or the other, by next week. But we want to pray for them, and I want to pray for you. Heavenly Father, I thank you for this opportunity that you give us to teach and to minister and to unfold your love and your power that you have put inside of us. I ask you to touch Roxanne this morning. I ask that you touch Eddie this morning. And I ask that you touch Ginger this morning to deliver that healthy baby that's going to be a special child. And I give you all the praise. Those that are listening to me this morning, I ask God to touch you. Whatever it is or whatever you need. The power is within you. I love you. I'll see you next week. God bless you.